That breaking news developing in Fairfax County right now. 7 News working to learn more about what led to an officer-involved shooting in McLean. It ended with a man dead just moments ago.
Let's get right over to our Carl Willis. He's live for us at the scene with the very latest tonight. Carl.
Well, Michelle, Jonathan, police were called to this scene right at 8:34 tonight. By 9 o'clock, just after 9 o'clock, a man was pronounced dead here on the scene. We are working to confirm this right now, what happened on the scene here, but we heard from emergency communications that this man was shot multiple times in the chest. Officers firing those shots. We're told that no police officers were shot. Now, this is the scene from overhead from Skytrack. This is the 6900 block of Arbor Lane in McLean. Officers were called to a home for a man throwing objects outside. Police say there was some sort of a struggle between the man led to officers shooting and killing him. Now, we're being kept away from the scene here on the ground. It's right up that street. We're told that police will provide an update tonight. We're still about 45 minutes away or so from that, but we'll have updates online.
Thank you for your patience. As you can see, we're handling a police officer-involved shooting in this residential McLean community. We have 3 officers. Major Eli Corey, who's the acting deputy chief of our patrol bureau, is going to go into some detail. Anytime we have a police officer-involved shooting in Fairfax County, we handle it with our Major Crimes Bureau. They conduct the criminal investigation aspect of it, and our Internal Affairs Bureau reviews the administrative phase of it as well to ensure that our officers are acting in compliance with our policies, procedures, and expectations. We take all officer-involved shootings very seriously. We've already been in touch with the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, which is routine each time we have an officer-involved shooting in Fairfax County. I can assure you that the officer-involved shootings here are best in practice, and we will conduct it thoroughly. Our transparency policy mandates, and we've been doing this for the last year now, that we will release body camera footage within 30 days. And we have 3 police officers that Major Corey is going to describe to you involved in this police officer-involved shooting. So we have 3 body cameras. We also have electronic control weapons that you'll know better as tasers. All 3 of our officers had electronic control weapons, and Major Corey will describe to you that 2 of the 3 discharged their electronic control weapons, or their tasers, several times before one of our 3 police officers ended up discharging his firearm and using deadly force, striking and killing the man who resides on this street. So Major Corey will go into some more details, and I'm sure you have questions, and we'll take your questions. Major.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening. So just after 7 p.m., we received a call for service about a man in crisis. So our officers arrived on scene with a clinician, which is part of our co-responder model. Unfortunately, they were not able to find the person they were looking for, but before leaving, our clinicians gave some additional information to the callers before leaving the scene. At about 8:45 p.m., we got another call for service. When we arrived the second time, we were able to find the man we originally called for earlier in the evening. A struggle ensued. The man charged at our 3 officers with something in his hand very quickly. 2 of our officers deployed their electronic control weapon multiple times, and the 3rd officer deployed his service weapon, striking the man, and he collapsed. We provided immediate emergency services to him, first aid at the scene. Unfortunately, he died at the scene. Right now we're conducting a Internal Affairs Bureau investigation, just at the beginning of that, and also our Major Crimes Bureau is also conducting their investigation to determine some more facts and circumstances of the case.
Any questions?
Who was he? Who was the man? Can you tell us about him?
Yeah, so right now we're determining who he was and you know what relation to the house, but that's all going to be part of the investigation.
Do you believe he lived in this neighborhood?
It's something we're going to release very soon. So once we have all those facts, we're going to update the community in a very timely manner.
Was anyone in danger? Was this man attacking anyone or posing a threat?
Yeah, so it was a very quick interaction. The man did charge at the officers with something in his hand, and that was perceived by the officers as a threat.
I mean, someone in the house or in the neighborhood?
Yeah, so the calls we got were for a man in crisis.
Was it from that home or from neighbors, or who made the call?
It was from people who were at the home.
You heard that there might have been calls
At the-
beforehand. This wasn't the first call. Is that? Can you confirm?
So we got 2 calls tonight, and then those were the only 2 we got.
From from the same home?
That's correct.
Let me add something to Major Corey mentioned that you may or may not have picked up on. The first time we responded to the home for this man who was in crisis, we couldn't find him, but we had one of our co-responder clinicians with our patrol officers. You know that, like several other local jurisdictions, we've adopted a co-responder model. We're in phase 1 of our co-responder program in Fairfax County, so there was a clinician with our police officers. So after we couldn't find this man the first time we were called, the clinician took some additional steps to communicate with some folks as well. The second time we responded is when we encountered him inside his home.
Is there a reason that clinician didn't come the second time your officers returned?
We're going to determine exactly where she was, but the nature of the second call was far different than the nature of the first call. This happened very, very quickly, and I want to say, if I haven't said it already, any loss of life is tragic, and the Fairfax County Police Department takes no pleasure in telling you that a man lost his life tonight. And I can tell you, when these police officers came to work today, to work in the McLean district, none of them had any expectation that they were going to be involved in this type of struggle that led to the use of first less than lethal force and then deadly force. So it's something that certainly the family, we're going to work with them with some assets that we have to help them through this entire process, and we afford our police officers those same services as well.
Can you say if he's related to the people that made the call?
So we had a couple different calls, so I don't want to describe the exact nature of the relationship, but the calls that came in to the Fairfax County Police Department for help for this man in crisis came from people who are known to this man. This is a residential community, so I don't want to tell you exactly who they are because we got a couple calls. So I don't want to misspeak on that. And I assure all of you that by the time we get to our follow-up presser where we release the body camera footage, and that'll be the opportunity we're going to go into much greater detail. And we've been doing that all along. We're committed to transparency. Yes, sir.
Chief, I wanted to ask two questions. One, was this inside the house or in the front yard, or can you give us a general description of the area?
So when the officers went inside the home, they were in what I will describe as the foyer of the home. And then the man presented himself inside the home. The officers initially had plenty of distance between themselves and the man. The man at some point in time had objects in his hand that we're not yet ready to describe because there are a lot of objects on the scene that we need to figure out which ones were in his hand and which ones weren't. But at some point in time, the man threw something at our officers and then actually charged at our 3 officers.
From inside the home?
From inside the home. So I'll say that our officers were in the foyer. He was in the room on the other side of the foyer, all connected. They all run into each other. And by the time he charged at our officers and we deployed the electronic control weapons, and as we discharged our firearm, the man actually collapsed right in front of the front door immediately outside the home, if that makes sense.
Sure. The discharge of weapons, 2 electronic, 2 tasers, bullet, and 1 officer that fired a firearm. Was that kind of all simultaneous, or was it an attempt to stop him and he kept coming,
Yeah.
and then there's...
Yeah, the electronic control weapons, or the tasers, were first. And again, we'll be able to go into the sequencing of the use of force, less than lethal and lethal, when we are able to slow this down, gather more information, and present it at the follow-up press conference, which will again be within 30 days.
Were any of the objects, I guess, enough to cause harm to one of the officers?
So that's all going to be part of this thorough investigation. So there's a lot of objects. We're trying to sort out which ones were in this man's possession at the time. We'll get to the bottom of it. There's detectives from our Major Crimes Bureau here. There's detectives from our Internal Affairs Bureau. We'll handle this scene in a way it deserves to be handled. A life was lost tonight. That's not something that we take lightly, and we're going to conduct a thorough investigation, as we always do. Yes, ma'am.
You said the tasers were
discharged multiple times. Are you able to tell us how many times the service weapon was discharged?
So the firearm was discharged several times. I don't know exactly how many. The tasers, the electronic control weapons, were also discharged several times. I don't know exactly how many. And again, I'm not trying to be vague, but when I know exactly how many, we'll say that at the follow-up press conference.
Quick question about the first phone call. You were saying that you couldn't find him, right?
Right.
Can you go into that at all?
Well, I'll touch on it just a little bit because I think it's important for the community to know that we made efforts to locate this man who was described by a 911 caller as a person in crisis. We actually went into his home. We went into his home and we couldn't find him. And then after we couldn't find him in his home, our officers spent several minutes driving around this community looking for him, but we couldn't find him. And we had our clinician with us at the time. The clinician made some communication outreach to some folks associated with this man, was able to get in touch with them. And then not too long after that, we got the second call for service. We made our way into the foyer, and that's when we were confronted by this man.
So he is a neighbor. He does live in this neighborhood.
He's certainly in this neighborhood tonight. I don't want to say that this is his address of record. I don't know that yet. We don't know that yet. I don't want to make assumptions, but he's not unfamiliar with the home or the neighborhood.
He's at the same home you went in the first time. Maybe that's another.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Same home.
And just to clarify, were the shots? The tasers were deployed. Our words, taser, inside. Was the weapon fired inside as well? Is he coming out, or is it inside, outside?
So again, you're all eventually going to see this on
Okay.
body camera footage. So the worst thing I can do is misspeak, right?
Yeah.
So the front door, the foyer, the struggle that Major Corey described occurs right there at the foyer, at the front door. The front door is open. The struggle occurs right there at the foot of that front door in the foyer. And the man came from a distance when he charged at the officers. And again, we're going to determine what, if anything, he had in his hands. He had something in his hands. We don't know exactly what yet. We don't know exactly what he did with it yet. We're going to determine all that. But we want to share with the community that this is something that we take very seriously in Fairfax County, as does every jurisdiction in the National Capital Region. But we're committed to a thorough, impartial investigation. We'll do it in partnership with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, and we'll maintain our transparency posture with the community.
Chief, one last question. This is the second fatal officer involved shooting in a week. What can you say about training procedures that avoid these types of incidences, or why two of those situations have happened so close together involving this type of outcome?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Last night I was at our firearms range and training academy, taking what's called reaction training. Our police department has, within the last year, trained each and every patrol squad on these very scenarios. These scenarios where someone may or may not be in crisis, the scenarios where there's less than lethal tools available, the scenarios where deadly force may be used. So the training that we afford our police officers is world class in Fairfax County. Ironically, I was with a group of patrol officers engaging in this very same training last night. So, there's no correlation between the Springfield Town Center fatal police-involved shooting and this police-involved shooting. There's no correlation to it. But again, anytime these happen, it's the most serious thing that can happen to any police department, the use of deadly force. And the community and the police department, we're all marching shoulder to shoulder. When these things happen, we take them seriously, we investigate them, and we determine what the facts are.